Welcome, Cristina. Welcome to Inside the Vacuum podcast. Cristina is the founder of Cledara. Cristina, what is Cledara?
Yes, well, hi, Marcel, and thank you for having me in your podcast. It's always an honor to speak with you. Regarding, what's Cledara? Or how did that started? So essentially what we are building at Cledara is a platform to help companies manage all the different software subscriptions that they need to buy and then use on a recurring basis to do their business. And the reason why we started Cledara is because at the previous fintech company that I was working, we experienced a problem around using a lot of software subscriptions and not really knowing who was using what, why, how much we were paying. And that proved to be a problem not only for us, but for many. And then given that, the SaaS market, it keeps growing and there is more and more people adopting these new ways of working, then we just thought, well, we just need to create something to help companies. And that's essentially how Cledara came about. Then the other interesting thing of Cledara is that it's like in the intersection of SaaS and fintech, because the way in which we are using the financial product of Cledara is more of an enabler rather than a product in itself. And I think that's something quite distinct of Cledara.
Yeah, so this is probably a good opportunity to explain how a regular customer sort of starts using Cledara, so to better understand how it works and how it sort of helps out in their life.
Yeah, so usually the way it goes, right? So customers or our current customers, they've had a problem like we had, right, around having lots of SaaS and not knowing. They go through the painful exercise of having to figure out what they have and why and who owns it. And when they finally got that list, they realized, well, that's going to go out of date tomorrow as soon as somebody buys something. And then they look for a solution like ours. And then at that point is when they join Cledara, they invite the rest of their team into the platform as well. And then everybody starts shifting all their subscriptions to Cledara, and anything new, they buy it also through our platform. And like this, essentially, we also manage what we could say a very light procurement process for companies, where we enable them to have that visibility of, okay, who requested and who approved it and how much are we paying, and then essentially just keep track on an ongoing basis.
Yes, thank you. So one of the really cool things I like about Cledara is that it has actually figured out a completely simple yet seamless way of canceling subscriptions, because you actually use virtual cards for all the payments, right?
Yes, that's right. So every time you request a new subscription through Cledara, we create a new virtual card for it. So essentially you have 25 subscriptions, you have 25 virtual cards. And if at some point you no longer want to pay for one of those subscriptions for whichever reason, you know that you can cancel that card because that card is only for that subscription. And what we found is that that's also super convenient when you use your card to pay for multiple things, and sometimes it may get compromised in a particular vendor. So then rather than having to replace all the, your card details in all the different subscriptions that you have, you only need to replace one because that card is only used on that particular vendor.
That's really cool. So basically you just have one account that manages all the money and it just funnels into whatever card is needed, right?
Exactly.
These are all virtual cards, right? So you don't actually issue physical cards. So have you had sort of demand for also issuing physical cards, or have you figured out a different way of people using those cards outside of the platform?
So we are very much focused on anything which is to be purchased online. So we are not looking anytime soon really at issuing physical cards. Having said that, some customers have asked if it's something that we would provide, because they see, how they could potentially do not only their online spend, but everything else through Cledara. And as I say, it's not something that we have now as, closely in our roadmap, but it's something that we may consider in the future. Then, of course, some customers get very creative and they've loaded Cledara cards onto Curve, and then they go and they use Cledara in the real world through a Curve card. So that works, but that's not something that we necessarily sell or market.
Of course. But it's always up for creative customers and clients to figure out ways that you didn't expect, right?
Exactly. So it's nice to see how, they want to use it more, so they find a way to do it.
So you mentioned that this is mostly product designed for companies, right? So this isn't something that regular day-to-day users would use to track their Netflix or Spotify tracking, but this is mostly designed for companies. Is that right?
Yes, we only offer the solution to companies at the moment. It's true that some of the customers we have, when they see it, they do say, "Oh wow, we would love to have these for ourselves, for our own subscriptions." But I think for us at the moment, the B2B market is big enough that we are very, very much focused on that. And maybe farther down the line, we would look at consumer, but definitely not for now.
What would you say were the biggest challenges for you? So Cledara has been in existence for about 1.5 years, right? If I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. So what were the biggest challenges for you, sort of starting off as the founder, coming up with this idea based on you seeing a need in the market? What was the sort of the biggest challenge or set of challenges that you think you had to overcome?
So I think, first of all, this is a relatively new problem. So a big challenge was, all right, so people know that they are using SaaS. When you ask them, they realize that they don't really know how many they are using and that potentially there is a lot of duplication there. But they are not yet aware that there is a problem, actually. And from the very beginning, we've had this, we need to raise awareness about what's happening and why it's important that companies take, hold of all their different SaaS subscriptions early on, and that they don't wait until they have 50 or 100 to then do something about it, because then it becomes quite tedious. So that's definitely was something that very early on, we realized it was a challenge, and we had to be very active. And that's why we've been going to a lot of conferences and producing content around it, because we do think that there is this awareness campaign that needs to happen. And then the other thing is, obviously, you need to have a team, because you need to build a company, but then equally you need money for that, because at the beginning the company obviously is not making any profits, any revenue. So that was the first challenges, right? So go out there and convince or speak to investors that believe in what you are building, to obviously give you that funding so that you can then deliver those results. And so this was probably the first challenge that every startup faces when you need to raise money. We first raised from some angels, and then we raised from Anthemis and BBVA, and that was great, obviously, because Anthemis they are an amazing fintech fund, and all the expertise that they bring to us, it's incredible, and all the support is amazing, and then obviously having also BBVA through that investment on board, that's also very valuable for us, because it gives us potentially a massive distribution network there.
Was this an ongoing process, or was this something where you just reached out to them and you had an offer already?
So we've known Anthemis for a long time, and I think that's something that's super important, I would say, for any founder to know and hopefully apply, right? Which is to really build those relationships early on, even when you don't need that investment. Maybe you are still at an idea stage and you have the opportunity to speak to some seed or Series A funds. Then start building that relationship, start sharing with them, what you are working on, your progress. And what we did from month one was write a newsletter to those that we call friends of Cledara, and there are investors and mentors, and we would essentially share what we were working on, and whether that was closing the funding round or new features, or we were hiring someone, or we needed something. We also took the opportunity on those newsletters to ask for if we needed help somewhere. And it's remarkable the amount of people that are willing to actually help you when you ask and you are clear on what you need. And I think showing that progression and for investors to see your progression over time means that they are not investing in a dot, they are investing in a line, right? So they've seen how you've evolved, and they are able to, when you come to say, okay, now I need to raise money, and look, you could potentially fit in the type of round that we are raising. I think then it's when that becomes interesting, right? Because they know you.
It's a perfect starting point for many startups or many companies that are just starting off and are figuring out, how do I actually bring attention to myself?
Yeah, no, and I really think that it brings a lot of value, because in the end, you want to prove investors that you can execute. That's the key, right? You may have a brilliant idea, but if you cannot execute, then you're done. But if is this through these updates and regular, you may have a call every 6 months or every 5 months, and then you can check in and you can say, look, we told you that we would release these, and that's been released, or we told you that we would increase the team by 2 more people in the engineering team, and look, we've done it, and we are now fully operational. So these are proof points, and this is super valuable for investors.
Would you say that there are investors or people that you included in these friends of Cledara that have helped you in ways that you wouldn't consider monetary or direct, but have guided you in a particular way that you can now only look at in retrospect?
Yeah, I mean, so through these updates, we don't necessarily look for, it's not necessarily just for investment, it's for anything, right? So sometimes, they will get to know about Cledara and all what we are doing. And when, for example, we were launching the rewards program, if somebody sees that, oh, hey, you should speak to this person really knows a lot about rewards, and they can, give you a hand. And okay, fantastic. So, there they make the intro, you take it, and then you learn, right? So I think it opens up to a lot of different opportunities. And even, we've had customers refer through it. Say, hey, I was speaking to this other person, and, I mentioned them about Cledara because maybe our newsletter popped up on their inbox that morning, and they had that conversation, and that resulted in us getting a customer as a result. So there are all these different things that you never know how they will play out. Mm-hmm. But definitely we've had a lot of value coming out of engaging regularly with people and being quite open and transparent really about what we do.
So you mentioned the rewards program. That's fairly new, right? That you launched that fairly recently. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so we launched that at Paris FinTech Forum, and essentially what we are doing there is, when our customers pay for their software through our Cledara cards, then they get cash back that they can then use and spend on whatever they choose. And that's been very well received by our customers, and it's been also even very well received by vendors, software vendors out there, because they see it as an opportunity to use Cledara as a distribution channel. Okay, so we are looking at it quite holistically in terms of the end-to-end journey of SaaS. Yeah,
that's really cool. So we've spoken a lot in the past, but I don't think I ever asked you where the name Cledara came from.
Well, it's not a very, let's say, nice explanation. Like there is no real meaning behind the name. It's so I was just putting, we had to find a name essentially.
Yes.
That was available out there, because nowadays all the domains are taken. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, well, I know some key elements that I want the product to have. And one is to bring transparency, to foster collaboration. So there were different words that emerged. And then essentially I just put all those ones in a word generator. And one of the results was Cledara. And I really liked it because I think that it does bring that, clarity. It almost sounds like clarity, right? So, and that's what you want to bring with Cledara into your organization. You want to help people see what you have, see how much you're paying, see who is using it. So essentially that's how it came about, that name.
Interesting, because you actually managed to get the .com domain for that, which is now fairly rare for companies to have that. They even pay hundreds of thousands, or I think I heard at some point somebody even paid like several million for a domain for a startup, which just doesn't make sense to me. But I guess maybe if the domain is cool enough, you can it might make sense.
Yeah, for us it had to be available, obviously, and then the other requirement was that it didn't. We didn't want it to mean anything, because we didn't want, the people search for your company and they get tons of other results. So we were looking for something that was, just us.
Yeah, and you did it.
Yeah.
So you obviously are listening to customers, talking to them, and hearing their feedback. Is there something where you really thought that something, whether it's a feature or something that would really, really work, but then when actual customers got either their hands on it or you actually asked them, you were very surprised that this absolutely doesn't make sense, or this is something that you don't really want in the platform at all?
I would say, so the answer to that is no. And that's because, we launched, and you know that, so we launched an MVP super quickly. I would say 3 months into having incorporated the company, we had an MVP in the market. We had the first couple of customers, and we were always, or we've always, and we still are today, speaking to customers every day to really understand what is it that will drive value for them. And of course, a feature may not be, good for all of them, but as long as it's good for a part of them, then that's for us, something that we will move forward. But we make sure that we don't just build what we think is best for them, but that we always listen into okay, what are the pains that they are trying to fix, what are the problems that they face, and then we try to come up with a solution that, because we are also users ourselves of Cledara, we kind of test it even on ourselves, and okay, would that also be useful for us as a business? And if the answer is yes, then we move it forward.
Absolutely. So we're now moving, we're recording this in late March of 2020, and the entire sort of world, all they're talking about is this looming crisis of this coronavirus that's spreading all over the world. So maybe in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on the projections, or even years, in some very negative projections, this will be over. How do you see this situation impacting your business and the business and the sort of fintech ecosystem in general?
Well, I mean, there has been definitely a slowdown in general, right? So everything has stopped, and of course, some businesses are thriving, like it's always the case in this type of situations. But I would say that for the majority, the numbers are going down. People are becoming much more conservative, and that's both from a business and from an investing side, right? So of course, at Cledara, we've had to think, okay, what are the potential futures, and how can we prepare for some of those, and then in terms of impact on the everyday, that's been, I would say, minimum, because we are used to working remotely, so that's not necessarily been an adjustment. Of course, there was the first moment of, okay, now we cannot get out of the house, we cannot see other people, so there is a social element that still impacts people. So we try to mitigate that by setting up virtual coffees and trying to share more than just work with the team, and of course that's at the team and people level. But then of course we, in terms of our customers, so we are trying to now really focus on how can we continue building a product that when we come after this period, it delights our customers even more. So what we've definitely shifted towards much more product than ever, because that's what's definitely under our control today.
So I'm going to ask you a very simple question.
Okay.
If you could put up a billboard of anything somewhere in maybe your hometown or where you live, what would you put on that billboard? And not necessarily around your business, but more about your philosophy in life, or something that you would like the world to know and to share from your perspective.
Very simple. If you love someone or something, say it. People don't say it enough, and I think that people don't express enough, and I think that we are very quick at saying what we don't like, and we are very quick at complaining when something is wrong, but it takes a long time for people to say, actually, I love this, but on a genuine way, and to people that you don't necessarily know that much. So I think that sharing more of those positives would definitely help everyone.
Thank you very much, Cristina, for taking the time to talk about Cledara, to talk about your journey a little bit, and for that wonderful positive message at the end. I think, especially in these times, it's great to congratulate, say thank you, and say what you love, because we really need to share that amongst each other.
Yes. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in the podcast. And yes, always happy to speak to you, Marcel.
Thank you very much, Cristina, and all the best in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you.